यशोदनन्दन व्रजजन रञ्जन यशोदनन्दन व्रजजन रञ्जन यशोदनन्दन व्रजजन रञ्जन यमुनतीरा वनचारि यमुनतीरा वनचारि जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा शील प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा शील प्रभुपादा जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजक स्तुत सदस्य श्रीमद इस वेंकटेश भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी शील प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन संस्थापक श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजक स्तुत सदस्य श्रीमद भक्तिवेदांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाप्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद ठाकुर किशोरदास बाबा महाराज की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद सच्चिदानंद सरस्वती ठाकुर की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद वैष्णव सार्वभौम जगन्नाथ दास बाबा महाराज की जय। जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जी गोपाल भट्ट दास गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नमाचार्य दास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से गौर श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत दादा शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड की घोरतन की जय। श्री श्री खबरांगी बेंगलोर ईश्वर भगवान की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्र मई से सुदर्शन भगवान की जय। श्री मायपुर धाम की जय। श्रीमदावन धाम की जय। गंगामाई की जय। यमुना माई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। श्री हरनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथ श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। इस्कॉन वर्तमान गुरुवंत की जय। समावेद भक्तों की जय। गौर प्रेमानंद हरि all glories to the assembled bodies. All glories to the assembled bodies. All glories to the assembled bodies. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada की जय। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Tamsjivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sakanalita Shri Vishakanvitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabanto Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namaste Saptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarupyascha Kripasindu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advait Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, chapter number 17, entirely Punishment and Reward of Kali. So the previous chapter, we find Mother Earth feeling separation after Lord Krishna winds up his pastimes. And the chapter 17 begins with Sudha Goswami mentioning as to how Maharaj Parishit reached that place and he saw a Shudra who was dressed like a king and he was beating a bull and a cow with a club as if they had no owner. And Srila Prabhupada mentions about how the principal symptoms of Kali are and how Parishit Maharaj reacted to these after seeing these symptoms. The first principal sign of the age of Kali is that lower class Shudras, that is men without any Brahminical culture and spiritual initiation, will be dressed like administrators or kings, and their principal business would be of these non-Kshatriya rulers would be to send animals, innocent animals like a cow and bull to slaughterhouses. So here the specific significance is of a Shudra who pretends himself to be a king but does not have the qualities of a king. Now these kings are supposed to be the state heads or the national head. They are supposed to be Kshatriyas who are trained in spiritual culture and supposed to be ruling on the advice of the Brahmanas who are the head of the state, who advise on these kings on how to rule the kingdom. But here we find that Kali was dressed as a Shudra. Now we'll see how today's situation, we see that most of the ruling heads, they are not spiritually cultured, nor do they take the advice of the Brahmanas, because even the Brahmanas today are degraded. They are not in a position to advise the states on what is the ruling and how they have to rule the kingdom for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. So that's why it is mentioned that they are non-Kshatriya rulers. So those who are not, even in today's situation, we find that if somebody is not qualified for a particular position, and if they try to do that service, they will not turn out to be good rulers or good service keepers. So when the Brahmanas fall down, the Kshatriyas fall down, the Vaishyas, they also fall down, and the cow and the bull are supposed to be protected by the Vaishyas, because the Vaishyas' profession is agriculture, cow protection, and trade. But instead of taking care of the cows and bulls, the cows and bulls wander around as if they don't have an owner. Actually, if we see today, if we go to the roads and drive also, we'll see so many of them, the bulls or cows, they just keep going. And one of the most popular instances that happen is that these, we may not see it here in the city, but at least in the rural parts of every part of the country, we'll find that so many accidents takes place by trains going at a very high speed, hitting some bull or a cow, and they leave their body up with that accident. So that means it's as good as there is no one to take care of these bulls and cows. So they have no owner. Otherwise, the correct way is that somebody goes and grazes these cows or bulls in the fields and somebody takes care of them. That is a real owner. Whereas we find in the age of Kali, there is no one who takes care of them. With the result, they are not only neglected, but they are sent to the slaughterhouses, which we will discuss now. Now, the bull actually is, yeah, the bull is actually as good as a white lotus flower. Now, he was terrified of the Shudra who was beating him, and he was so afraid that he was standing on one leg, trembling and urinating. Now, why the bull is compared to the white lotus flower, we will discuss. Now, there are many descendants of Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, we will see, who claim to be Brahmanas or Kshatriyas, but they are not qualified and they don't have the culture of a Vedic wisdom. So with the result, we will find mostly it is Shudras who are doing this professions, and they declare themselves to be Brahmanas or Kshatriyas. So many names we find today. And they don't understand what are the principles of religion. The next symptom of Scully is that the principles of religion are spotlessly white. That means the principles of religions don't have any contamination. Srimad Bhagavatam states, Dharmam tu Shakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. That means the principles of religion emanate from the Supreme Lord Himself, and they don't have any contamination. The Lord is free from all contaminations. Similarly, the principles of religion which emanate from Him also don't have any contamination. But we will see that there are so many interpretations of the Vedic literatures that are given today in this age of Kali by so many writers, each one giving their own understanding of the scriptures, even though they may not be qualified to do that. So we find even in the case of epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, there's so many misinterpretations that are given, with the result that people get carried away by these, and when actual interpretation of the scripture is given, they start doubting the scriptures. So the one who have written, they are also the commentary, they are also not qualified to write commentary on the scriptures. But by the costless mercy of pure devotees like Srila Prabhupada, we have got scriptures in the form of Bhagavad Gita as it is, Srimad Bhagavatam, which we are discussing today. Now, if we see lotus, the lotus is supposed to have two very important factors. One is the purity factor, and the other one is its beauty. And lotus is supposed to be one of the most beautiful flowers. And if we see, its beauty is compared to, is so beautiful that it is compared to the beauty of the various limbs of the parts of the body of the Lord. Like we say lotus feet of the Lord, we say lotus arms, we say lotus face, lotus lips. So this way, all the parts of the body of the Lord are compared to a lotus, because the lotus is very, very beautiful to look at. Not only that it is beautiful to look at, but also it is, in terms of purity, it's very, very pure. An example is given that lotus can grow anywhere where there's a little bit of water. And in that water, even if there is a lot of dirt, but still what happens if we see a lotus flower, the lotus remains above the water level. It does not actually touch the dirt in that water. So which means is that that is the purity of the whiteness of the lotus. Now, whiteness is also signifies pure, and the lotus also signifies beauty as well as purity. So even in the most dirtiest of the places, if the lotus is there, it does not get dirt contaminated by the dirt around or pollution around. So that is the beauty of this lotus. And the other point that is important is that these principles of religion are attacked by Shudras. That means the Shudras will defy the principles of religion in this age of Kali. What to talk about the principles of religion, even if we talk about God Himself, today the people have, the Shudras, the so-called Brahmanas or Kshatriyas or Vaishyas have degraded themselves to such an extent. If you talk about God also, they say that why there, who is God? Where is God? There is no God. Have you seen God? We have not seen God. So the point is that there is no adherence to the principles of religion. They don't believe in sadhu, shastra, and guru, which are the very, very essence of the religion. The next important point that we find from this chapter is that the bull was actually used to plow the field, and thereby we get the grains. We normally say Mother Earth. So the cow is as good as a mother, and bull is as good as a father, because the bull is plowed, and in return we get the grains, and the grains are like our sustenance. So that is why the bull and cow are compared to father and mother. Now, what happens in this age of Kali is that these bulls are replaced by the so-called mechanical implements, like for example the tractors. The agriculturists feel that by employing a tractor, they don't have to employ the bulls, or they don't have to employ mankind to take care of these bulls, and they use tractors, thinking that by using these they can save a lot of money. That is a tendency in Kali Yuga. Everybody wants quick money, and everybody wants money in big numbers also. So when you try to adopt to these circumstances or situations, which are not actually natural, but you adopt for your own convenience, for your sense gratification, then we go against the laws of nature, and one has to suffer for this. Now, what happens is that with the result that the bulls are not used, so what will they do with these bulls? So finally, they send them to the slaughterhouses, which are actually not the, it's a very great sin to send these cows and bulls to slaughterhouses. Now, even in the case of cows, the cow gives so many things which are very, very useful for the welfare of the human, for the welfare of the mankind. The cow gives milk. We normally say Panchagavya. That means milk. From milk, we make yogurt, we make butter, we make ghee. The cow also gives urine and cow dung, which are of high medicinal properties for the benefit of mankind. So cow actually not only is beneficial to the mankind, but she is also rendered poor and calfless. It means that the cow is also ignored. What happens is that when the cow reaches a stage when it's not giving milk anymore, then the so-called Vaishyas send these cows and bulls to the slaughterhouses. And not only that, a cow gives a lot of milk when there is a calf next to it. So the practice was that the calf used to be kept very much next to the cow, and that love and affection makes the cow give plenty of milk. And the arrangement of nature itself is that the calf does not drink the entire milk that a cow can give, because it cannot. So the calf drinks a little bit of milk, and the balance of the milk is being given for distribution to mankind. So this is a system that was prevailing even a few years back. And another most important point that is there is that those who had these cows, of course, nowadays people having cows is also very less. They have dogs, cats as pet animals. But the earlier practice was to have cows and bulls. And it was something that they couldn't be, more or less every householder would have it. But as the towns and cities started taking to the process of urbanization, then governments also started making rules that cows are not allowed in the streets. Of course, it is in the interest of these animals, but what has happened is that it is due to system of bringing automated mobiles, scooters, cars, etc. on the roads, which the society has brought in, which was not required in the previous years. So people used to commute, they used to walk to a long distance also, even if they had to go. But then with the coming of the so-called automobile, the cows and bulls were prohibited to enter the city. And so many states have made rules prohibiting them. So what happens is that cows don't have a profession, have a use, bulls don't have a use. On the contrary, what happens is that these cows are given so many fertilizer food which are having so many chemicals ingredients, and there are so many artificial ways of milking the cows that are introduced. With the result, what happens is that the milk that we get from the cow are also adulterated. So that is why it is very important to have a cow, not only a cow or a bull, but then utilize them in their right perspective, which the so-called Vaishyas in the Kali Yuga, because they are degraded, they don't have a proper understanding and they don't use them in the proper perspective. So a cow actually becomes very, very blissful and happy when it has got a calf around it. And many saints or rishis, what earlier days, what they used to do is they used to live, or their sustenance was purely on milk. And even in Srimad Bhagavatam, we find that Srila Sukadeva Goswami actually used to go to a house holder and wait outside till he was given some milk. And it was a practice of the Grihasthas also who have cows to give these rishis milk. And what happens is they give milk to these saintly persons, and these saintly personalities like Srila Sukadeva Goswami, in return they give transcendental knowledge to the Vaishyas. So it was, they were not just drinking and milk giving going away, but then they were giving in return transcendental knowledge by which the Vaishyas were also benefited. So this is what is the real principle of religion, which started declining as the age of Kali started. The next symptom of this Kali is seen as the distressed condition of cow. Now, cow can give lot of benefits which we have discussed. At the same time here, a cow is compared to a, uh, yeah, Krishna. Actually, the cows are very, very dear to Krishna. We will not see anywhere a photo of Krishna also without cows. And there is a shloka in Brahma Samhita in which Lord Brahma says, Chintamani Prakara Satmasu Kalpaviksha Lakshapadesh Surabhir Abhipalayantam. The translation says, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is the tending the cows, yielding all desire in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of lakhs of gopis. So Krishna had Kamadhenos, which were all desire fulfilling cows, and they give enough milk when they were being milked. And these Kamadhenus of Goloka, it is said that they pour forth oceans of milk in the shape of fountain of love, showering transcendental bliss that does away with the hunger and thirst of the pure devotees. So cows are very, very dear to Krishna. And we see from this prayer also how Lord Brahma glorifies Krishna along with the cow. And we also see that when Indra poured down heavily the rain in the Govardhana hill pastime, he knew that Krishna will be pleased when he pleases Mother Surabhi. So he brought Surabhi and then offered nice, glorious prayers, and then that is how he pleased Krishna. So Indra also understood the importance of cow in mankind. Then the important point that is mentioned in this is that milking the cow means actually drawing religious principles from the cow. Now, dharma in the form of milk is used for drinking, by which one can become religious. Milk is a very nutritious food and for the body. It makes one to be inclined spiritually. That means it makes, or rather gives health, the tissues of the brain by which one can take up spiritual life. spiritual life can't be taken up by someone who is in the mode of passion and ignorance. At least if somebody is in the mode of goodness, it is easier for him to take up the spiritual path, for which milk is a big help to mankind. So with so many benefits that are there to the milk, the maintenance of these cows and bulls, they don't understand. Now, another important factor is that if you see Lord Balaram, he carries a plow with him. He does not carry a tractor. This tractor is something that has come in the last couple of few years. But Balaram carries a plow that also signifies the importance of plowing the agricultural fields by means of implements like the plow, not by tractors. So bull is a representation of the grains or the plowing, and the cow represents Mother Earth. And if we see today, Mother Earth is also ignored. Why when we say ignored? Because the earth has become a sort of a burden. In the earlier years, people used to have a lot of respect to Mother Earth. They would not go, for example, go to banks like Ganga, Yamuna, and dirty the places. But today, if we see, if you go to the banks of Ganga, Yamuna, so much of contamination that has been done by the people who come there, but still they retain their purity. But not that is not the thing. But the Mother Earth itself has been overburdened by, one is the dirt or contamination that has been brought by people who come there, but so many skyscrapers and are there built all over the major cities and towns. It is like a burden for Mother Earth. If somebody puts a big weight on on our head to the extent that we can't carry it, that is the way Mother Earth is overburdened. And that is why we see that the cows are having tears in their eyes, and the Shudra, like people, are beating the cow, means actually they are bringing a lot of burden on Mother Earth, by which she is forced to shed tears. And on the contrary, what is happening is that instead of relying on natural foods like milk and grain, people nowadays resort to so many eating other types of foods. They can't live without eating meat. There are some who believe that it is necessary to be healthy, to uh, have meat to be healthy. But mankind lived without eating meat. Also, they were leading a very healthy life. They lived without automobiles, but they all led a very healthy life. Today, it is difficult to say even if somebody will survive in 30s or 40s leading a very healthy life, because the society, the towns, cities, they all have got polluted. This is a symptom of Kali, as to how burden has been brought on Mother Earth. So many sinful activities are committed on this Mother Earth that is why she feels overburdened. Then it is mentioned as to how the bull is standing on one leg of the principles of religion. These principles of religion are austerity, mercy, truthfulness, and cleanliness. Austerity does not exist anymore. Mercy is not at all there because the animals are sent to slaughterhouses. Cleanliness is not to talk about it, even whether you get water or air, that is also not clean. And if you see truthfulness, that is one leg of the bull on which the bull is standing. And even that, the Kali in the form of Shudra is beating, that indicates that even the truthfulness is declining, or rather coming to weakening day by day, and the bull might fall down any time. That means the principles of religion don't have any protection, and she is seeking shelter. That means she is looking for people who can give shelter to the principles of religion and adopt the principles of religion, which are given by the Lord Himself for the benefit of mankind. But the influence of Kali is so deep that it has brought ignorance to the mass of the society. And there are clear mentions in so many cases in Srimad Bhagavatam and so many places, which is true, that if the cows and bulls are kept happy, society remains peaceful. And if you are peaceful, you can actually lead a blissful life, spiritually also, and you are materially also taken care of by adopting a natural way of life, which Kali has, after coming in, has degraded very badly. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that is, since we are all in ignorance, to be back to knowledge, we take shelter of scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and adopt the principles of religion from these scriptures and live for the happiness of humanity. Now, Parikshit Maharaj sees these things and he does not like it because Parikshit Maharaj was a great devotee of the Lord. When devotees of the Lord see such atrocities being committed, then they feel very, very agitated. And Parikshit Maharaj, being a pure devotee of the Lord, he was also very angry and he went all out to protect this cow and bull. So he was very much equipped with arrows and bows, and he was seated on a chariot and spoke to the Kali or the Shudra with a very deep voice, sounding like thunder. That is the mode with which a head of the state comes to when he sees somebody being harmed. Now, Kshat means to protect the Praja. Praja is anyone who has taken birth comes under the definition of Praja. So, when we say Praja, all the living entities that have taken birth have the right for their protection. So it is not only that human beings have to be protected, but all the living entities that have taken birth are to be protected. And that is the duty of a Kshatriya. But here we see how Maharaj Parikshit, when he saw the cow and bull being beaten by Kali, he got upset and he speaks to this bull, to Kali, with a very deep and sound with a lot of gravity. That means he was so angry on seeing this incident that he starts speaking. Now, the Kali Yuga is degraded to such an extent, the Prabhupada mentions that one cannot rule by the so-called executive heads who are representatives of the degraded public. That means the public have also degraded, and when the public have degraded by the so-called democratic system of ruling, they also bring show bottled elected executives. That means the public also select someone who is of interest for them. Public's desire today is sense gratification. So they will elect people who can satisfy their senses. And that is why we see before an election takes place, so many abominable activities take place. Some places liquor is distributed. Some places so many meat is distributed. Why? Because it satisfies the senses of the degraded public. And when they are satisfied with the so-called leaders, they elect such leaders. And when these leaders don't have the understanding of the Vedic wisdom, then what happens is that they are unable to give protection to the cow and bull. What to talk about cow and bull? So many these things are there, which day to day we see. Now, what to talk about the cow and bull? Even within mankind, it is said that in the scripture that old age people, the children, women, they are all meant to be protected by the society. Now, if you see, children today are being exploited in the schools. If not in the schools, there are so many instances we see that how children are being sold for money. It's a very big sinful activity. Similarly, old age people are sent to old age homes. Now, they are supposed to be maintained by their descendants, but on the contrary, because of the present work culture that is introduced in the society, husband and wife works, they both go to work, so there's no one to take care of the children, so children have to be sent to what is called daycare. Age-old people have to be sent to old age homes. Similarly, women are meant to be protected in the society. Now, if we see the instances of exploitation of women today, it is very, very abominable. And in a society where protection is not given to basic human also, what, how can they understand the necessity of giving protection to important living entities and like the bulls and cow? So when the Kali Yuga degrades or whenever there's a necessity, the Lord appears as an incarnation or he sends his devotees to establish religious principles again. So such powerful administrators are rulers of the poor citizens by, if we see in Kali, only by dress. Now we find so many powerful rulers. They might continue ruling for years together, and after they are sick, their descendants might continue. Earlier also descendants used to continue, but they were all qualified for this particular service. But today's rulers, neither they have the quality nor do their descendants have the quality to rule the kingdom. Now all these so-called Brahmanas or Kshatriyas are called twice born, because these classes of men were taking one birth naturally within the family, and then they were given another birth by spiritual initiation by a bona fide acharya or a spiritual master. So a Kshatriya is also a twice born Brahmana, and his duty is to give protection to the helpless. During the reign of Parikshit Maharaj also, it is said there were many, many kings spread all over the world, but they would all align with the instructions given by Parikshit Maharaj. He ruled by Brahminical culture, and he would see that all the other kings also abide by him. That is how, even during the reign of Maharaja Yudhishthira, the practice was that they would send a horse all over the earth, and if somebody challenges the horse, then the army would come and defeat them, uh, and then the horse returns back. So this was a practice during the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira also. Another important point is that if a ruler collects taxes but does not protect the citizens, it is a very big sinful activity. And Maharaj Yudhishthira also ensured that, of course, Lord Krishna was also present. So Krishna was present, the Pandavas were present. So there was peace in the society. But once they wound up their pastimes, and Parikshit Maharaj was also seeing this at the time of, just before his disappearance, he saw that Kali was infiltrating. That means when the Lord is present, or when pure devotees of the Lord are present, Kali Yuga cannot have any effect in the society. This was what was prevailing. And of course, nowadays we say government of the people, government by the people, government for the people. But what we actually see is government of Kali, government for Kali, and government by Kali. So when Parikshit Maharaj got very angry, he is telling Kali, how dare do you beat an innocent cow? Because Lord Krishna and Arjuna are out of sight. Since you are beating an innocent animal in a secluded place, you are therefore considered a culprit and therefore deserve to be killed. So the system in the earlier days was that, of course, there are many codes that were there in mankind, Manu Samhita, which, for example, if somebody steals, his hand was used to be cut off. Why this system was there was because so that the society learns that by conducting a sinful activity, you are liable to be punished. And another important thing was there was no need for a citizen or citizens of the state to wait for justice to be given to someone who is committing sinful activities. It was instant. There was no court which was taking years together. Sometimes even after years together, the cases are never settled these days. But those days, until the reign of Maharaj Parikshit, it was an instant justice. And he says that he says that Kali, you should be killed. That means he was prepared to kill Kali right at that point of time. That was the nature of the system that was prevalent, and Parikshit Maharaj was one among them who was exhibiting by example. So even if we see in during the time of Lord Rama, there is a very nice pastime in Ramayana, wherein one time Lord Rama asked Lakshmana, just go out and see. Rama was sitting in the palace and he asked Lakshmana, just go out and see if there is anyone who has got any petition. I mean, people used to have grievances and they were all open to go and meet the king and address their grievances. So Rama asked once Lakshmana, just go out and see if there is anybody. So Lakshmana said, no, there is no one. I was just there out. Still Rama said that, no, no, just go and see if somebody may be there. So Lakshmana came and he saw a dog. And the dog was actually bleeding in the head. And he asked, what is this happening? The dog said that I want to meet Lord Rama. Lakshmana said that you can address your grievance with me. I will tell Lord Rama. The dog said, no, no, I want to address Lord Rama myself. But I can't enter the palace because I'm not qualified to be there in the palace. See, a dog also felt that he was so insignificant to enter a palace. So Lakshmana went and reported this to Rama. Rama immediately called for the dog. He asked the dog, what is the problem that you have blood coming out of your head? Who has committed some this activity on you? The dog replied, I was just sitting and one Brahmana with so and so name, he came and hit me on my head. I don't know what is my fault. Then the Lord told Lakshmana, please call for this Brahmana immediately. I want to see him. The Brahmana was called in. The Lord asked Brahmana, why is the reason that you have brought you have hit this dog and brought him to a bleeding state? The Brahmana said, I was actually begging my alms and I saw this dog on way. Now, I told him to get up, but he was getting up very, very slowly. Now, see, many times when we walk also, some dog might be on way, but we will not harm that. We will think that we should not harm. So this Brahmana's example was cited. He said that this dog was actually moving very, very slowly, which brought in a sort of an agitation in my mind. I got angry. And I had a stick with which I hit the dog's head, which has resulted in the bleeding. So then those days, injustice was done to everyone, and justice was given immediately also. So now, when the question of justice was there, the ministers in the Lord Rama's this thing, they said that a Brahmana can never be punished by law. So at that time, actually, when the dog comes to see Lord Rama, Rama asks, what can I do for you? But the dog didn't ask anything. So when the minister said that Brahmana cannot be punished, and there was a discussion on how justice is to be given to this Brahmana for having punished the dog. The dog then started speaking. The dog said, can I give my version? Lord Rama said, yes. Now, the dog said that this Brahmana, instead of being punished, I would like him to be made as a spiritual head of a particular community. Now, Lord Rama already promised. Lord Rama said, okay, we make him as a head of a spiritual community, spiritual head of a community. And then there was a grand procession being taken with the Brahmana on the elephant. So there was a lot of confusion. The ministers asked Lord Rama that actually the question was giving some sort of a punishment so that the Brahmana does not commit the activity again. So Lord Rama knew that the Lord dog has got the answer. He told the dog, you may give the answer because you know the principles of religion. So the dog said, in my previous birth, I was occupying the position of a spiritual head of that community. But somehow or the other, I fell to take birth as a dog. So this Brahmana, by being made a spiritual head, he will degrade to 7 generations. So what more can be there for this? And then this is how the justice was given to the Brahmana who insulted the dog by bringing harm to the dog. So this is how the Esther years, all the living entities were taken care of. Many examples like this in Srimad Bhagavatam of even plants being taken care of, like the Parchetas. They went to perform austerities. And when they came, they saw so many plants and trees who have grown up, so many bushes have grown up, they didn't have even way to walk. But then out of anger, then they got angry and they started killing the trees and plants. But moon god came and he intervened. He said, no, no, please don't do that. And he stopped. So this is how importance was given to all the living entities until the age of Kali started. And Parikshit Maharaj ensured that the bull and calf are not agitated or harmed. And Parikshit Maharaj tells Kali that now for the first time in a kingdom which is probably protected by the arms of the kings of Kuru dynasty, I see you grieving. That is, he's telling the cow and bull, grieving with tears in your eyes. And until now, no one has shed tears because of royal negligence. That means Parikshit Maharaj assured both cow and the bull that until now, nobody has shed tears in this kingdom, but it is the first time that you, the bull and cow, are shedding tears out of fear because they don't have a shelter. So the point is that the principles of religion don't have shelter. Men and animal who are supposed to be protected, they don't have a shelter. But in the kingdom of God, everybody gets protected. Even until the time of the other example given is in Srimad Bhagavatam is about Amrish Maharaj. He used to ensure that all the citizens are elevated to God consciousness, and that is the duty of a Kshatriya. The Kshatriyas use religion and they teach, make others also learn religion and enforce also, of which protection of the living entities is one of the vital importance. Whereas what happens is that when the Shudras who are not qualified to maintain, when they take up this responsibility, they are not learned. With the result, what happens? They take tax, but then they are not able to give protection. And that is the reason the society is very much disturbed. Also, there was a system whereby the Vaishyas used to pay 25%, and they used to pay this not for any other purpose, but for use of Vedic wisdom by the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. The Brahmanas teach by Shastras, and the Kshatriyas use the Shastra. That means the Brahmanas use their words of Vedic wisdom, and the Shastras or the weapons were used by the Kshatriyas, so that the citizen learns. Of course, the citizens were also well qualified. They did not need a sword, but still the Kshatriyas carry a sword for protection. In the seventh canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a mention where Narad Muni instructs Yudhishthira Maharaj as to how Grihastha should live. In one of the slokas, he says, one should treat animals such as deer, camels, asses, monkeys, mice, snakes, birds, and flies exactly like one's own son. How little difference there actually is between children and innocent animals. That means clearly there is a description that these innocent animals are as good as our own children. So killing these animals in a secluded place, which is what we find in the translation, is a very, very abominable act which needs to be punished immediately. Now here there is a mention of how even snakes, for example, snakes are generally considered very, very poisonous. But Srila Prabhupada mentioned that if these living entities are maintained, not maintained, are given their food, they become harmless. So one should need not rather fear for these harmful animals by giving them the food. So there was a system whereby the grihasthas, when they cook food, first they have to fulfill their needs of the belly. Then they used to distribute to grihasthas outside, the saintly persons who come to their house. And then whatever is left out, it used to be distributed to these animals. So with the result that this is how the arrangement was made by the Lord, with the results that even animals were harmless. They were not harmful, which like we see today. Today, the animals are harmful out of envy. But if they are carefully fed, then this does not happen. Of course, there is an arrangement by the by the laws of nature itself, that the higher species of life, like the cub, the tiger or lion, they can sustain by having the lower species of life, like they kill animals and they sustain. But mankind is such that they are supposed to live only on food like grains and milk and vegetables and plants. So that is why it was possible for the bulls and cows to be protected by Kshatriyas who were executive heads like Maharaj Parikshit. And therefore, the society was peaceful and people were happy. Now, subsequently, it is mentioned that this protection of all these bulls and cows and other animals can be possible when there is a state ruled by an executive like Parikshit Maharaj. And Parikshit Maharaj then addresses the cow as mother, for he is a cultured, twice born Kshatriya king. Also, Bhumi Devi, Mother Earth, is none other than the consort of the Lord himself when he appeared as Varahadev. Then Parikshit Maharaj chastises Kali. He says, "O chaste one, the king's good name, duration of life, and good rebirth vanish when all kinds of living beings are terrified by miscreants in his kingdom. It is certainly the prime duty of the king to subdue first the sufferings of those who suffer. Therefore, I must kill this most wretched man because he is violent against other living beings." That means the rulers also were very much concerned that the uh, ruling is properly done, failing which their duration of life is shortened. They won't have another rebirth in a good background. Like, for example, I mentioned about the uh, spiritual head becoming a dog. And why this happened? Because the living beings are terrified by the miscreants in a kingdom. Today, every living entity is suffering because there are so many miscreants in the kingdom that we live in. And that is the reason animals are terrified. And when the living entities are terrified, then the king also suffers, the citizen also suffers. There's also mention as to how when a living entity brings harm to another living entity, there is no other option but to suffer for that. One has to suffer for these sinful reactions. Subsequent slokas we find when there is some disturbance caused by animals, wild animals in a village or town, the police or others take action immediately. So it is a government duty of the government to kill at once all the bad social elements such as thieves, dacoits, or murderers. And the king used to be afraid of bringing bad reputation. So Maharaj Parikshit then addresses the bull. He says, "O son of Surabhi, who has cut off your three legs in the state of kings who are obedient to the laws of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? There is no one unhappy as you." That means the kings were concerned about the unhappiness, if at all, that existed in their kingdom. They wanted that everyone should be happy in their kingdom. And he says, "Please tell me of the proprietor of these mutilations which blackmail the reputations of the sons of Tirtha." That means even whether it is during the Pandavas or Ram Rajya, everyone was happy. That's why we call Ram Rajya. And then he says, yeah, I'll skip some of the slokas because there are some more important ones. In one sloka, Parikshit Maharaj says, "An upstart living being who commits offenses by torturing those who are offenseless shall be directly uprooted by me, even though he may be a denizen of heaven with armor and decoration." That means Parikshit Maharaj addresses saying that even if he is a denizen of heaven, normally the denizens of heaven don't come here, but even if they come as a part of some pastime, I don't mind killing them because they are if they are committing a sinful activity, it is my duty to protect them. That means the kings or the ruling heads were more powerful than even the demigods. This was the position of the kings of the yesteryears. Now, when these words were spoken by Parishit Maharaj, the personality of religion, that is the bull. Then he got captivated by seeing the qualities of the Pandavas, and then he addresses the bull. Sorry, he addresses Parishit Maharaj. He says, the Pandavas, by their unalloyed devotion service and full surrender unto the Lord, made it possible for the Lord to become a chariot driver or sometimes even their messenger. That means the Pandavas were glorious rulers, and the bull is actually glorifying the Pandavas before replying. So Parikshit Maharaj is asking, who is that who is torturing you? So in reply, the bull is giving a reply to the Parikshit Maharaj. He says, oh greatest among human beings, it is very difficult to ascertain the particular miscreant who has caused our sufferings, because we are bewildered by all the different opinions of theoretical philosophers. So here the bull is replying, it is very difficult for us to ascertain the cause of suffering because there are so many different philosophies that give different reasons for suffering. If we see, I'll give a small brief of some of the philosophy that are explained here. Yeah. There are many like Vaibhashika philosophy, and some descriptions are given in some scriptures about each of these philosophies. Like Jaimini and his followers, they established that fruitive activity is the root cause of suffering and people not having happiness. Even if there's a superhuman authority, they say that that means people perform fruitive activities, but they don't believe that God is existing, or even if the God is there, he is not powerful. And generally, we see that even in today, some of them believe that there is no God, because they say if God is there, why mankind suffers? So this is a question being answered through this answer by the bull. Then there are some who say uh, there is Sankhya philosophy. Like the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we find Sankhya, but this atheistic Sankhya is different from the theistic philosophy of Sankhya. They believe that all the material existence are there, but they don't believe in the existence of God. They believe that God is also impersonal. The Gautama philosophy is there, Kannada philosophy is there. They believe that atomic combination of matter is the cause of everything. That means atom combined together and form matter. And Shankarites and Buddhists, they have some philosophy. They believe, particularly Shankarites believe that God is there, but they believe that God does not have a form. The Ashtavakra philosophy, they discover that the spiritual effulgence of Brahman is the cause of all causes. But Lord himself states in Bhagavad Gita that he is the source of impersonal Brahman also, and therefore he is the personality of Godhead. So generally people think, why people suffer when God is there? So the conclusion is that one example is given is of Veda Vyas. Srila Veda Vyas has given the Vedas, Vedanta Sutras. He has given the essence of the Vedanta Sutras in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. And so books like literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita are given to us as Shastras, but one needs to understand these Shastras by mercy of a sadhu, to be learned from a sadhu, and by taking shelter of a guru who gives the spiritual instructions. So therefore, there are some who think that this is the cause of suffering, some who think that something else is the cause of suffering. But ultimately, what Vedanta, Vedavyas has given is that man performs activities. Now the point is that we all have a desire to enjoy, because being part of the parcel of the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, Lord enjoys with all his living beings, but we feel Why we can't enjoy? Why can't we be God? So when we have a desire to enjoy, then we have a desire to uh, bring something in our life which can give us that enjoyment. But unfortunately, we don't understand what can bring enjoyment to us. So we think that by trying to achieve some performing some fruitive activities, we can get some enjoyment to us. But what happens is that as long as we have a material body, there is a tendency in us to commit sinful activities also. That is a condition of this material body. So we suffer for committing sinful activities, and we also get some results by performing pious activities. The results of pious activities is you go to heaven, spend some time there, as long as your pious results are accumulated, and once they are finished, you come back again. And for sinful activities, we have to suffer. So this is what that happens. Now, Lord has been so merciful to us that He has given Sadhu, Shastra, and Guru to come out of this suffering permanently by taking shelter of these three, that is Sadhu, Shastra, and Guru. But the root cause of all this is that we tend to think that I am this body, that I have a right to enjoy. That is ignorance. But we have to come to darkness, we have to come to knowledge. And that knowledge is given that we are not the body, but we are a spirit soul. And our duty is not a right, it's our duty to give pleasure to the Supreme Lord, whereby by giving pleasure to the Supreme Lord, the Jiva also derives happiness. So the bull concludes, the conclusion is that the cause of suffering is a desire to enjoy separately from the Lord, for which the jiva is responsible for his action. But generally what happens is that you normally blame others when we get suffering, and we get happiness, we try to claim it to be our activity. For example, when we get a lottery, we don't blame others. But when we lose some money, then we start blaming others. But the process of correction is given to us in these Shastras. But by following these Shastras and taking shelter of Guru and Sadhu, one understands what is knowledge and what is ignorance. And then one has to analyze and correct himself, that what is it that I am going through and what is it due to, and what can I correct myself. Because if after understanding, if one continues to commit sinful activities, one continues to suffer. And so, in the last two slokas, the conclusion is given that Parikshit Maharaj actually heard from the bull speak like this, and he understood that he is none other, that this bull is none other than the personality of religion, because no one else can speak like this only except the personality of religion. So Parikshit Maharaj actually acknowledged the understanding of the principles of religion by this bull. Then the king says, Parikshit Maharaj replies, "Oh, you who are in the form of a bull, you know the truth of religion, and you are speaking according to the principle that the destination intended for the proprietor of irreligious act is also intended for one who identifies the proprietor. You are no other than the personality of religion." The conclusion is that no one is directly responsible for being a benefactor or mischief monger without the sanction of the Lord. That means whatever happens, happens by the will of the Lord. So this pastime of Kali taking a role of a ruling head, the bull taking a form of the principles of religion, cow representing the mother earth, this pastime is also arranged by the Lord to teach a lesson to us, that many lessons we have learned today, saying that living entities are to be protected, so that when they live, we also live in happiness. Also, adharma leads to hell. That means any sinful activity that is committed will lead one to hell. The reactions that one suffers is something like a postman who delivers a message. Postman just, somebody has given sent a post or a parcel, we get the message, we collect the parcel or the message. So the reactions of our karma is something that is delivered to us by none other than Yamaraj, who gives the who awards based on the principle of religion. So whatever sufferings are there, devotees of the Lord understand that it is due to their karma, and then don't blame anyone for their sufferings. So this is the conclusion, that devotees normally look at everything as a perspective, as a mercy of the Lord. So even devotees, when they suffer, they understand that the suffering has been brought about for their correction by the Lord himself, and that they are to be blamed. They don't put the blame on somebody else. So this is how this whole episode was arranged by the Lord, which we have discussed so far in the 22 slokas. And thereafter, of course, other discussions take place, which the next speaker will take you through. So with this, I conclude the class for the day. For the next 2 minutes, I can take some questions, some comments, if you have.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, this is very nice class, and we know about the Kali, like how the Kali is acted and how the Kali begins.
Yes.
But here in the age of Kali, how should we maintain the Krishna consciousness for the long time? And because we are seeing many things outside which is not religious.
Okay.
But with my strength, I cannot act directly on them. Correct. I mean,
Okay.
how to cultivate them? Like some people are not allowing to talk also. Like if you are saying some religious things,
Okay.
then how to start cultivating them?
Thank you very much for asking this question. Very good question. The first point you said is that in this Kali Yuga, how to follow religion. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given a very simple process, which is not very complicated, of taking shelter of the holy name by chanting the process, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, which is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Coming to your next question, the answer is that I gave an example of a lotus. We see so many things around which may be abominable, but the lotus still stands without taking dirt on it. If even a drop of water falls on a leaf of a lotus flower, the water doesn't stay there. So similarly, we have to stay away from these abominable activities by associating with devotees of the Lord. And another most important point is that our sadhana or our practice of religion can be strengthened only by understanding by a couple of things that has been given by the Lord himself, taking shelter of the association of the devotees of the Lord. However you may be, but it is only in the association of a person becomes a drunkard in the association of drunkards. Similarly, a person is able to practice his principles of religion by taking shelter of those who are adhering to the principles of religion, who are none other than devotees of the Lord. Then other things are like reading Srimad Bhagavatam. There may be people who may be not listen to our preaching. That is okay. But still, we have to be determined to continue our spiritual masters, our founder Acharya, spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, at that time, during his time, when things were much better than today, he said you may have to spill till tons of blood to make one a devotee of the Lord. So it is not very easy. But first thing is that before we try to preach, we must strengthen our consciousness so that we are not shaken by the abominable association of abominable people, which is very, very easy today. So that can be strengthened by being in the association of devotees of the Lord, and with them practice the other things like understanding Shastras, have prasadam to purify our existence, worship the Lord. So all these activities are given by the Lord, which can help us stand firmly. If we are firm in our understanding of these principles, it becomes easier for us to preach to others. Because when you preach, different people need to be addressed in different ways. For example, if we preach to an elderly, to a school student or a college student, what we preach to the elders, they may not look at it in the right perspective. So in different ways, we take different paths to preach to the different segments of people. So when we understand these intricacies and when we are firmly fixed, our preaching will have definitely have some effect. But we have to be fixed and determined, irrespective of whatever it is. Because the Lord Himself says in Bhagavad Gita, I am pleased by the greatest is personality person is one who preaches my glories. The Lord Himself becomes pleased. But another important thing that we must understand is that we do our duty, but we don't look for results from that. Results will come. What we are doing in the interest of the Lord knows. So we continue our efforts in preaching. Did I answer your question, Prabhu?
Yeah, yes, Prabhuji. But
Yes.
I have one more question
Yes,
related to
Prabhu.
the same thing.
Yes, Prabhu.
Like, um, did we occur any sin or offense after seeing that incident if we didn't act upon that?
Can you repeat the
Like,
question? If you see an
uh,
incident,
yeah, if we see an incident, if we didn't act upon that,
okay.
then did we get the sin or offense?
Can you narrate an example so that I can answer accordingly? Like, for example,
The same thing, like somebody is beating a cow or something.
yes,
Suppose uh, at the time, if you are not able to help to avoid that instant, I mean
yes,
action,
yeah,
then but by seeing, like as I know the some religious principles, if I didn't go there and rescue the cow, if I am not doing that, then did I occur a sin or offense?
it
Because I saw
depends.
the instant.
Oh, I see. Okay. You saw an incident of somebody beating a cow or a bull or something like that. Is it? If
Means
you
how the
see,
sins and offenses will occur. I mean, in terms of
the first thing is you are not committing a sin, but it is also your duty to see that the other living entities are not committed on sinful activities are not committed. At least you can preach to the person that by doing this, this activity you'll have to face the reactions of this. You can do your duty by just preaching to the person, and then you feel it's not prepared to listen, you can ignore it. But if at least if you see something unlawful happening, you can also advise by just, we may not be physically fit, but at least mentally or even spiritually, at least we know that it has got a reaction for bringing a harm to a living entity. If we can preach to him the glories of this, nothing better than that. But if you are not able to do it, then better to ignore if it is in your interest, in the sense that if you feel that a man is beating another man, if you feel that you are not powerful enough, just a request, please don't fight, it is not in your use. But if you feel that can bring harm to you, then better to keep away from it. That is not a sinful activity. But if you know something and preach and convince, better to try to do that.
yeah, sure. Thank you so much for giving response.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
Anybody else?